How's it
What's
going?
up, y'all?
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. I don't know if you say happy Memorial Day, but happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, for all those who are in the US, I hope you're enjoying Memorial Day weekend.
Nice little break. So welcome to Hear Us Out. We at episode 13.
13 today. Yeah.
We love the vibes. We love the vibes.
Thanks
So,
for hanging with us till now.
right? We 13 episodes in. Y'all been here. Y'all been kicking with us. We love it. We love to see you every week. So shout out to y'all. Ladi, let's get into it. What are we talking about today?
So we're talking about one of the very popular poll options, especially on Instagram. So shout out to everyone who voted on Instagram, which is essentially balancing Web2 and Web3 in music and media. So we might have a mix of folks today, some who are more on the traditional side of stuff, some who are more on the emerging tech side of stuff, and some of them who are in between, like me, Web 2.5, as I like to call it. So yeah.
We love the vibes. Bet. Okay, I love that. Shout out to y'all who voted. We love it. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. So what Web 2 and Web 3?
Right. Yeah. So like if this is your, first time like hearing these terms, or maybe you've heard them before, we still like have no idea what this means. Essentially, Web 2 just means like traditional. So like whatever is currently or has been happening regularly in music and media, that's Web 2. So like, television, streaming, newsletters, whatever, all those types of forms of music, just music anywhere or media anywhere that is regularly consumed by the average consumer is Web 2. Web 3 is kind of like a step up from that in like the tech world. So Web 3 is what they call like the new form of the internet. So they say essentially the way to look at it is like Web 1 was just reading. So that's email and like static web pages. Web 2 is read and write. So that's like social media, websites, interactive media, that sort of thing. And then Web 3 is read, write, and own. So that means like collecting things on chain. And we'll talk more about, different sort of basic definitions to know to kind of understanding that. But that's sort of like the 1, 2, 3 of it all. Yeah.
Oh, we love a nice little overview. We love a nice little overview of what we talking about. That's a vibe.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to everybody. I feel like too when we're talking about like today we're talking about balancing Web 2 and Web 3. And right now we just gave you kind of a very high level overview of like the difference between the two webs, quote unquote. And I think more than anything, what this conversation will probably lend itself to be is more so just a conversation about how to actually really be like integrating the newest forms of technology and the newest innovations into what you're already doing. And as you're continuing to build and create or whatever capacity it is that you're within the music and media industry, I think that's one of the biggest concepts of this specific conversation when it comes to like finding that balance is really like, okay, how can I be utilizing these the different tools that the different quote unquote webs lend themselves to, and how can I be utilizing that in what I'm trying to build for myself, which I think is one of the bigger underlying messages of all of this new like Web3 stuff and what is it and how do we use it and why does it matter to me. So I think that's super important. I guess it could be really helpful too to talk about like, so you gave us like, Lottie, you talked about just some of the different ways that like the technology works, but like, I guess it would be really helpful for us too to talk about some of those like buzzwords that people have been hearing as it pertains to Web3.
So I'm sure all of you guys have heard by now of like NFTs, crypto, the metaverse, blockchain, like just to some degree or another, and in different respects. But just again, give you just like the very basic, very simple like aspects of this. So like Web3 is sort of like an umbrella term. It's an overarching thing that encompasses NFTs, crypto, the metaverse, blockchain, etc. So blockchain in and of itself essentially is just a system that records transactions. That's like the simplest way to think of it. It's open source, which means that anyone can kind of like see what's happening. It's, you know, transparent. And it's also what we call permissionless. So nobody has to essentially ask for permission to use it. And it's just like available to really anybody to build things on top of it and make things happen. So like on the blockchain, that's where you'll see this thing, this is where this thing resides, or this is how much this thing costs, or this is who it went to, this is who it came from, this is where it originated, all of these different aspects in relation to the metadata, which is what you'll find also in traditional, you know, music and media things too. It just essentially gives you the landscape of like everything that's happening. So that's like high level. The metaverse is something that you may or may not be familiar with. And the funny thing about the metaverse is that it's not strictly Web3, but it is utilized a lot. So it's really just kind of like a virtual reality. Like if you've ever done anything with like Roblox or anything like that, in a lot of ways, what happens in gaming is also like the metaverse. It's just kind of like this other world that people can exist in, either as consumers or creators, and they can make stuff happen. NFTs, which I'm sure every single person has heard of, and some have more positive things to say about it than others, but really it's just some sort of asset that is on the blockchain. So we call that a tokenized asset. So it can be, you know, an audio clip, it can be a JPEG, it can be really sort of like any kind of format of file that exists on the blockchain. And then last but not least is crypto, which you might have heard of even before you even knew what Web3 was. People know about, you know, Ethereum and Bitcoin and Doge. I love Doge. Sorry. And essentially it's like a type of money. It's like digital currency. So like the way like you spend things in dollars, the crypto equivalent to that is, or the digital equivalent to that is crypto. And so the interesting thing about it is that it's not the same as obviously regular money, because it's not something that's like issued from like a bank. But there generally is supposed to be like a finite amounts of it. So you can't like print more, you know, crypto like they would do with like US dollar or anything like that. So again, just like super basic, high level explanations of these things. And we will be providing resources where you can do more research on all these guys.
Because we 10 out of 10 recommend always doing your own research.
Especially with stuff like this, because it's very like, it's still new territory. Like even though there was kind of like a big boom in 2020, like up until like 2021 or 2022 or so, there's still like so much that's changing, so much to be learned. And also now with the way that things are advancing, it's not necessarily as complicated as it used to be, because there's ways to get involved that are a lot more what I call Web2 user friendly. So we'll talk about some of that stuff in a bit.
No, for sure, for sure. I think one of the biggest keys too is like, okay, y'all just introduced a bunch of stuff to us. And some people you may be like, I ain't never heard of none of this. And then there are others that may be like, yeah, I'm super familiar with it already, or whatever the case may be. I think one of the important parts of this conversation is like, why does any of this matter in the music and the media industry? And one of the like, I am a firm believer that like, as technology continues to shift and evolve over time, the industries that get impacted by that directly and the fastest are typically the entertainment, music, media industries, separate from healthcare and how all of the technological revolutions and evolutions can affect our healthcare system and things like that. But like the entertainment industry kind of plays a major part. It also plays a major part in really like even understanding like how this information is even passed around, you know? And so when I think about, okay, why does Web3 matter to somebody who may be Web2 specific? It's like, it's a new way. It's a new way. It provides access to a lot of different tools. Lottie just listed off several different ones, right? We got the metaverse, we got NFTs, we have cryptocurrency. Those are all different tools that you can be utilizing in any industry really, but in this industry specifically to tap into a new market, a new audience and what have you. And they help to make a lot of things just easier to do, a lot of things easier to track. When I think about the concept of like, okay, why does Web3 matter in music and media? It's like, well, one of the biggest things that we're seeing, which is not necessarily tied to Web3 specifically, but we are seeing how, you know, we look at the strikes that are happening right now. We're looking at a lot of different things that are happening right now, and there are a lot of different tech elements that are involved in them. And at the end of the day, I think it's a matter of really understanding as people, you know, professionals or artists in this industry, how do these tools affect what you do? And how can you be utilizing them to either make your job easier, or how can they be misused in a way that we should probably be aware of as the creators and the shakers and the movers who help to shape what culture and content and all of these things that get consumed looks like. So that's definitely something that I definitely think is important for us to just touch on too, is like, why does Web3 even matter in music and media? Like, what does that have to do? Okay, you just listed off all this stuff. What does that have to do with what we do? More than you think. It has a lot to do with it more than you think. I know Lottie definitely could talk more too on the music side about the access and the honestly the history making that is happening on the Web3 side as it pertains to music, music consumption, music access, music marketing, all of it, like how you're tapping into audiences, what that reach looks like. All of these things are that they can be directly impacted in a positive way. And obviously everything with every up, there's a down, and there are some other not the greatest ways, as I'm sure people have heard, like it's a scam. Oh my God, what's all this stuff? Yeah, like
Yeah, everything's a scam. Life's a scam. That's a conversation for another day. But
everything's a scam, life's a scam. So
yeah, I think
no,
the main
but
thing
yeah,
to understand though, like with Web3 and just like emerging technology in general, because it can apply to AI too, is that these are just tools which you can opt into using however you want. And interestingly enough, a lot of times they exist in ways that you might have been using already that you didn't even realize. So that's kind of something to keep in mind too.
Mhm.
And if there's a way to be involved early, then I encourage you to do your research and figure out where you feel comfortable stepping in, and then seeing what that looks like for you. That can start with joining a community and just like listening in Twitter Spaces, or tapping into Discord, or like reading articles, or you don't necessarily have to go straight to Coinbase and buy crypto, or you don't necessarily have to go to any platform and mint NFTs. It's like you can kind of dive in wherever it makes sense for you, and then kind of go from there. Like for me, like the start of things is low-key Doge. That's why I find it so funny, because I was just like on Robinhood, and then they had added the capability to get crypto, and I was like, I have heard of this, I don't really know what it is, but I see that they've got this coin for like 3 cents, and I already had some money in Robinhood, so I spent the money, and then I had like a 30x return or something like that. It's probably like 20 or so, but still, it was just like way more money than I had made back in a really short amount of time. And obviously that's a super kind of like niche example. It's not always going to be like that. But I don't know, I thought it was cool, and I was like, let me check this out. So just keep in mind, like, it's just something to explore. Like, you can have nothing to do, you can have everything to do with it. You kind of decide where you want to live on the spectrum in terms of like how involved you want to be. But I think it's important to stay tapped in enough to at least just have like a vague understanding of the ecosystem and how it may affect what's happening in the traditional world in music and media, but also beyond, because there are larger implications as well.
Definitely. And I think as it continues to grow and evolve, one of the biggest things that I feel like we hear people talking about a lot is like, okay, you mentioned this blockchain stuff, and you mentioned that it's permissionless, and that basically it sounds like it's the Wild West and people can do whatever they want. When it comes to the music and media industry, like, how does that work in our favor? We're a contract driven industry. We're an IP and rights driven industry. Your rights, your masters, the the who owns the rights to all of your stuff, like all of that stuff matters so deeply in an industry like this. And so I think that's one of the biggest areas of concern when people are trying to figure out, as artists and creatives and working in creative industries, is like, what is the fine line between these two different types of technology, and how can we be using them to our benefit, and how can they kind of set some stuff up that may be a little more complicated for what already works in the system that already exists, and how business is already transacted within these industries. So I think doing the research on that part is super important too, because it teaches you a lot about, like, okay, I could be utilizing, this Web3 technology to help reach my fans in a different way, or to reach my audience in a different way. At the same time, how much reach am I giving them, and finding that balance. I think when there was the big boom, a lot of people were really trying to really understand what was going on, because there were a lot of proponents of, like, you got to just do everything in Web3, screw the Web2 stuff, like, and this and that and this and that. And I think that's part of where I've seen a lot of different questions come in about, like, why do I have to choose one or the other? What's the difference between them? Like, what is that? And I think I always lean more into the fact that, like, just look at the technology for what it is and why it's being built. It's being built to utilize, like, to help us be able to do things sometimes more efficiently, more effectively. Sometimes it's rooted in like having easier access to information and things like that. So if you kind of keep yourself rooted in, okay, how can I be leveraging this as a tool, as opposed to changing my entire scope of how I do every single thing, but rather how can I be integrating some aspects of this to help me reach something in a better way, or in a faster way, or in a more economic way. This is something a tool that can be looked into to figure out how to leverage what it has to offer in that capacity, for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to talk like a little bit more, like, specifically, at least like for music, and I guess this can apply to media too, like why Web3 is important, like, in this space. Like, first and foremost, which I'm sure you guys have heard a lot, like, I know we've touched on this already, it's just like being able to monetize. So essentially, for the most part, for monetizing in music now, everyone knows there's touring, there's streaming, there's Bandcamp, and these are all things that I think people should still, like, continue to leverage. But the interesting thing about Web3 is that it actually opens you up to a whole different type of fan base. So, like, a lot of your traditional fans might not necessarily cross over with you into Web3, depending, but you can find, like, different types of fans that want to invest in you and invest in your music, and it can, be more than 0.004 cents a stream, or whatever it is. And so, like, sometimes that's great, because then it's like, okay, like, I don't need to stream something 4 million times, or however many times you need to stream it to make $1,000. Like, I can just sell 50 NFTs and make $1,000. And so that sometimes is a lot more feasible and can happen more easily, in such a way that can help you more immediately, especially if you are making a living off of music. So it's just like another revenue stream, if you will. Besides that, there's also, like, the ownership aspect, which is something that's really important too, especially independent talent. Because obviously, like, if you sign to a label or a publisher, like, they own your work. In Web3, you can own your work, and depending on the contract, sometimes the label or publisher doesn't necessarily have access to the NFTs, or if they do, it might not be to the same extent that they do of your traditional music. So that's something that, if you're signed, you'd have to figure that out with whatever publisher or label that you work with. But for a lot of the time, it's a separate entity, and that can be interesting. And then besides that, it's also that the folks who collect those NFTs, they own those, like, they own the music, or they own whatever asset that is. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they own the copyright. So again, this is just the understanding of what's happening traditionally too. Like, when it comes to, like, copyright and any other types of the master or stuff like that, unless it's specifically written in the terms, those are things that are going to be continued to be owned by the rights holder. But in terms of the actual asset in and of itself, that's owned by the purchaser. So when you get something, you know, on iTunes, or you're streaming something on Tidal, you don't own that necessarily. Even if you do buy things, sometimes you don't own them because they're within a platform. So it's something to keep in mind. And then with streaming, you know, people see like versions of songs taken down or changed or whatever, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's not yours. You don't own it. So there's a little bit more permanence there. And this is also true, of course, with traditional means as well. So if you have a vinyl or a CD, you can think of an NFT, if it's a music NFT, as if it's like a digital version of that thing. And then besides that, there's what we call D2C, or direct to consumer. So that's the fan artist connection. So artists are able to leverage things directly with their fan base. You don't have to go through a distributor. You don't have to go through a platform. You know, things can be on your own site. You can have your own types of what we call smart contracts, which is like essentially the layout of all the things that are happening with the NFT. So you can have things be as direct as you want, and you can have things come from you as much as you want, however you want to do that. And there's no sort of like middlemen in between that can interfere with what's happening. So that's stuff that's, for the most part, pretty appealing to artists, both signed artists and independent artists. I mean, we've seen, you know, people as big as, you know, Doja Cat be involved in the Web3 space. Nas, you know, like just big artists. La Russell, who's like a bigger artist on the independent side, is also in the space. So it's like people are able to kind of go about things in whichever way makes sense for them. And again, one of the cool things that I want to mention is that because the technology is changing and also the landscape is changing, a lot of things that might have been an issue when it came to Web3, especially music, you know, even 6 months ago, are not as much of an issue today. So it's important to keep in mind too. It's like there's a lot more opportunity for change, and you also have more of an ability to impact that change and have a say on how those things change. So like with a lot of these founders of these platforms, they'll be in the trenches, like they'll be with you on Discord or Telegram, like willing to get real-time feedback and make those updates. Like that's not something that you would really see with a traditional streaming platform or what have you. So all things to keep in mind.
No, yeah, for sure. I can definitely say, to shameless plug, as a team member on a emerging Web3 platform, a founding team member on emerging Web3 platform economy, like shameless plug. One of the things that, you know, our team is full of creatives who are in the music and media industry. And one of the things that we noticed was like, okay, wait, hold up. Like, there's so much access that can be given to creatives, especially freelance creatives, in this by utilizing this technology. You know, when we think about it, it's like when people ask me, why is Web3 useful, or like, why will my already functioning marketing agency or digital branding agency, or my already functioning, music production services as a producer, my songwriting services, like, why do I need to integrate Web3? Apart from what Ladi just said about, getting access to the funds and things like that, one of the things that was important to us was like, well, wait a second, let us build a platform that can allow for creators to kind of really maintain that autonomy over how their business operates. That's number one. But number two, creating a platform where creatives can get access to the entire market of people who only transact utilizing, let's say, cryptocurrency, for example. It's a whole other market of people. There's a whole other market of people who transact only using cryptocurrency, that listen to music, that watch TV shows, that buy things, right? So if you're a person that is providing said music services or any type of entertainment in that capacity, if you're a person who has tours and concert tickets that can be sold, if you're a person who has consulting services that you can do virtually over Zoom, why wouldn't you tap into a market of people that are already transacting, utilizing that, and they need your services as well? And they're looking for service providers who can let them pay for whatever they want to pay their concert ticket with by way of an NFT and crypto, all the different things, right? And so I think that that's one of the other ways, echoing and adding on to Lottie's point about like, okay, well, why is this a good use case? You know, when we're talking about a music artist, how can they be making more money? How can they maintain autonomy over their rights or their everything that they're working on, right? And this is one of those ways. And obviously, like we've said, this is emerging tech. I know I have a lot of people that be asking me, okay, so where does TV film fit? Beyond, it's emerging tech. You know, I think as we get, well, first and foremost, as we get over this whole entire situation that we're in on the TV film landscape, on the other side of it, there may be some more room to actually figure out how these types of things work. You know, IP is a huge issue and a huge concern. That's a big part of the TV film landscape, music as well. You know what I'm saying? So as we continue to emerge, the more research that we could all be doing right now in its earlier stages about like, okay, how can I get innovative and be thinking about as an artist, as a creator, as a creative professional, what can be done with this? How can this help me to leverage something else? I think that's the best way to approach trying to balance these two things. You know, I think we're all so accustomed to the contributions from Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and LinkedIn and all the other platforms that we've had right now. And so we've seen a ton of innovation that came from that. This is another layer. This is like the next step after that. So how can we be getting innovative the same way that we were back then, even though everybody was like, what the heck is a Facebook? Whatever. We're in that same moment. History repeats itself. So right now is the time to really be doing that research of like, okay, wait a minute, I'm a creative, I'm an artist. There might be something here. Even if I'm skeptical about it, I should at least just give myself the opportunity to get a little more educated on it on my own and make my own informed decision from that place so that I know, okay, I've learned about it. Web3 is not really for me, but at least I took the time to learn about it. You know, that's one of the angles that I personally take when people are like, well, how are you balancing like these two different things? And like, what is this new thing? And it's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm just making decisions from an informed place. I'm choosing my own stance based on the research that I do as a creative. And if it's like, if it works for me, I'll use it. And if it doesn't work for me, at least I looked it up. At least now I know what's out there and I can choose at that point whether or not I want to utilize it. So that would be some of the advice that I would give when it comes to like trying to figure out if you want to even be involved in the NFT, metaverse, crypto, Web3 stuff or not. You know, just do some research on it and then make a decision from a place of like, okay, I think I kind of understand a little more, maybe not for me right now. Maybe I'm willing to wait, or maybe I want to jump in. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, you made a lot of really great points, and I really appreciate you touching up on use cases too. I think that's like the first thing that comes to people's mind. Besides one, what is this? Two, it's like, okay, like, well, how is this helpful for me, or what can I do? And like, whether you're in music or in media, there's a couple of the same sort of use cases that apply. I love the one that you brought up about like services or consulting, because a lot of times that ties in beautifully into what people need, and then you can figure out exactly how you want to monetize and leverage that. And sometimes you can do that, you know, utilizing NFTs or tokens or whatever else, but we can get more into it. So like, you guys have pretty much all heard about NFTs. Easy, one of the like more like common ways and more like common use cases for creatives. Again, it's essentially just like a tokenized asset. So it can be an MP3, it could be a snippet, it could be a video, it can be a post, like it could be like a written post, like a blog post. It can be like some kind of short form video content, like a behind the scenes of like one of your shows. So it's like anything can be an NFT, pretty much anything digital, and then all of that or any of that can be put on chain. It can even be like concert tickets, like literally like pretty much anything can become tokenized. And again, there are platforms that exist to make it easier for you. You don't need to be coding things from scratch to do that. Besides that, there's the metaverse. So again, if you want to have some sort of like live virtual interaction, it's a super easy way to do performance stuff, to do stand-up, to do, it's like think of anything that exists like live in music or media that can be translated to the metaverse. And then
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
Because wait, just really because
no, go ahead.
No, yes, because I just want to highlight what Lottie's point right now is like, especially for those independent artists who are trying to figure out how to build traction around yourself, for example. what are the creative things that you can be doing? This technology is providing you with a creative lane that you can be doing to, in lieu of being able to go on a concert tour, you know, to be able to be touring right now because you don't have access or whatever. How about you just hop into my metaverse tour? Okay. How about we just do a tour in the metaverse and you don't have to leave the comfort of your home, your studio, or whatever it is. I just want to highlight that because that's a big one.
No, facts. And it's just, and that's why live streaming is so cool too, right? And again, like these are all things that can be done on chain and also converted into other things. So you're like, oh, this is just a live stream or this is just a metaverse performance. If it's recorded, that can become an NFT. That can be included into your, you know, mirror posts or lens posts. So the same way you repurpose content in what we call Web2 or the traditional industries, you can repurpose things in Web3. And so that's just more ways for you to reach more people, but also monetize and also like expand and grow your brand and your presence. And then last thing I'll mention is tokens. And tokens are really interesting because we are familiar with tokens in the traditional sense in that like when you used to go to like Chuck E. Cheese, there were tokens. Now it's like, you know, like in video games or, you know, or points even. Like if anyone here is a Sephora girly like myself, you get points anytime you get something. So tokens can be somewhat similar to that. The difference is that they're basically on chain. And so they can have some sort of actual monetary value, or they can be used to redeem things. And that's also where like POAPs can come into, and POAPs it stands for proof of attendance protocol. Essentially, it's just like a digital sort of verification that you attended an event, whether it's virtual or IRL. So like these are all things that have relevance in the traditional world, but they just essentially live on the blockchain. And that's a great way for you to be able to kind of keep track of, okay, like who actually shows up to all of my live streams, or who is like a really big like collector of my NFTs, or who is out here who, you know, attends like metaverse performances, or who's in like my Discord for stuff. Because then you can also communicate with people through like Discord and Telegram, and the same way you do community building traditionally, which I hope everyone is community building traditionally, you can do it virtually or on chain or in relation to Web3 as well. So lots of parallels there.
I love it. I love it. No, that was a good one. I'm glad we went over our use cases because I feel like that's the biggest part is like, okay, well,
Yeah.
how do we even leverage this? Why
So
does this,
that's the whole point of it, right? Because like if there wasn't a use case, like what would be the point?
what would be the point? Why would it matter? Why is everybody
Right.
talking?
And I think it's like some of these things you may like already have seen, like with Nike swoosh, like you might not know what Web3 is, but that's a Web3 thing. Like GQ even has their own like Web3 arm. The major labels do, like Atlantic Records, like to celebrate, I think their 75th year anniversary, they had a partnership with IYK, which is a really cool company because they make like what we call phygital, hate that word, but it is what it is. So it's like, it's a real merch, like a t-shirt, sweatshirt, whatever, but it has like a chip in it that can be redeemed for like NFT related stuff. So it's been interesting kind of seeing like, you know, the two worlds combined in a way that I call Web 2.5. So they can exist completely separately if you want to, or they can coexist. It really just depends on the type of artist you are, the type of audiences that you're looking to build, and how you're trying to leverage all these things. So there's a lot of flexibility, and there is increasingly more in flexibility as time goes on.
And as it continues to evolve, there's gonna be so many more avenues that'll be, you know, explored as people continue to really do that research and just that innovative thinking of like, okay, what else can we be doing with this to help us move our mission forward? That's the main reason why I encourage doing your own research on it, because you never know what idea you could come up with. That's the next thing. You know what I'm saying? Like when we really think about it, come on. Like, I will continuously, even though I know they're not everyone's favorite people, but I will continuously give the examples of all the social media, you know, platforms that were built back when they first started. People were like, what do you mean face in a book? What is that?
Yeah, no, it's
like,
so funny, right?
Now here we are, right? And we're at that same point now where it's like, okay, let's look at all the tech. Let's look at all the tools that it provides. What are the pathways that it has now lit up with all of this new emerging tech? What lines can be drawn. How can we really be building out something with this? And I think that that's the key, especially as it pertains to our industry, music, media, entertainment, TV, film, all of that, where we've seen that the need for autonomy in certain aspects of the industry, going back to the creative, could be beneficial, where we've seen equality in pay be an area of concern, be an area that people are willing to really go to bat for, as we're seeing happening right now, you know what I mean? And so it's like,
Yeah, shout out to the WGA, they're leading the charge, but it's like
shout out to SAG as well, because I know, and
hello.
shout out to the Directors Guild, because I know y'all, everybody's going through it.
Listen, the fact of the matter is, one of the things, that like Web3 or blockchain and all these things are supposed to solve for is, one, the inability for people to monetize things traditionally, two, the inability for people to actually own things traditionally, and three, the inability for people to be able to connect directly traditionally. And so there are a lot of, as we've seen, a lot of issues in terms of how things operate, whether it's barrier to entry or payment and whatever else. And so like Web3 is sort of working as, an equalizer to help combat any of those things. So something to keep in mind.
For sure, for sure. Do we have any questions in the chat? Let me see. No, we good?
Yeah, no, so far so good. I've been checking, and it's looking like it's okay. So let's also just talk about resources and platforms, because we've said a lot, okay, you guys should research, you should research, you should research. And yeah, like you can go on Google and, try to find stuff, but I just wanted to share some things that can be helpful to be able to do all this. So one resource I really like is Hi-Fi Labs. They're interesting because they're a community, but they also have like their blog and like stuff online where you can learn things. So tap in with them, really cool people, really, really artist focused, which is also why like Web3 is so great to me, because it's like, okay, they actually care about creators and putting them first in a lot of ways. Besides that, I really like Decrypt, which is a like news platform. They have a lot of informative articles and videos and all the things that can give you like the most high level and basic information, but also in-depth studies too. Besides that, similarly, there's NFT Now, which is it's essentially what I like to consider like the Billboard Pro of Web3 music. Like they're just on it. They have so many resources. They have their newsletter. They have so many things that they've got going on. They have like regular Twitter spaces. There's so many ways to be able to tap in with them. And they also have something called the Now Pass that they launched recently that you can look into. Besides that, there's Water and Music, which is a publication that I had known about even before Web3 was even a thing. I was like a Patreon subscriber. And essentially, they are really, really dope at talking about all the things that are happening at the intersection of music and tech. So obviously that means Web3, AI, like everything. So if you're someone who wants to nerd out on that stuff like myself, you can tap into like their case studies, their Discord, and they just have a lot of great resources, just brilliant folks that are working on research there as well. And then besides that, there are other communities like Campfire, which is one that I'm a part of. So plug. And that's like specifically for music creators and music innovators. So if you consider yourself a music creator or a music innovator, feel free to tap in with Campfire. We have a Telegram that we're in, and we're going to be having different types of releases and stuff. So you can kind of get a sense of like what it would look like to be a part of a community that does that. We have writing camps, we do it all, and we're going to be doing more. So stay tuned. And then we have Economy, which I'll let Rhyver talk about because she's on that side of things. But go ahead.
Yeah, then we have Economy. Economy is a service NFT marketplace. So essentially, if like I talked about earlier, if you're a creator, you're an innovator in any capacity, if you offer services for your business, so say for example you're a marketing consultant, if you're a music producer or engineer, so you mix and master, if you're a songwriter, if you're a more physical type of artist, so like if you work on commission, with visual art, if you're a nail tech, trying to think of all of the different creative things, our platform essentially is working to create a place where you can come and buy and sell those services as NFTs and utilize the blockchain to kind of keep track of all of that, which I know is super helpful for any freelancers out there when you're trying to remember, okay, wait, how many gigs did I have and how much was I supposed to be doing this and that for? And how many people book with me this month? Like, crap, I didn't keep track of my, whatever it is. This platform would allow for you to kind of utilize and leverage the blockchain, like we just talked about, to A, help you keep track of all of that, but then also B, tap into an audience and a network of people who transact utilizing crypto, and they're looking for creative individuals to help them move their businesses forward. The same as all of the traditional companies that we've mentioned earlier. So tap in with us. We do a lot of different programming on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Have had a couple of different IRL in real life events as well, but a whole movement, honestly. We have a newsletter and things like that to just kind of keep people abreast of everything that's coming with the platform, but then also just building a community together of people trying to really have autonomy over how their business is run, how their services are transacted and to whom, and how they get their profit from that. Yeah, I was trying to make sure that we captured all of the, when we do our recap of these episodes, I'll make sure to throw in some more of the like just traditional straight up like education on the Web3 tech specific stuff. If there are people that are interested in really understanding.
Yeah, for sure. And
No.
we're gonna be having like a newsletter dedicated to this, blog post, all that. So like there's gonna be all the links. So y'all don't have to go scrambling, looking around. Don't worry. We got you. And then last but not least, of course, we gotta discuss just a couple of platforms. There's so many. So I'm just gonna give like a quick TLDR on each one. So the first one I want to share is Even, which is one I actually really, really like because they're perfectly what I consider Web 2.5. So if you go on their platform and you sign up and you buy anything on there, it's like you sign up with your email. You buy things using like Apple Pay and credit card. Like it's super traditional. And that's what I mean when I say like things are changing in such a way that the average consumer can become involved and they don't even necessarily know that it's an NFT or know that it's Web3. And I think that is something that is going to become a lot more popular over the course
of lower
of
barrier of entry.
5 to 10 years, because it's just like, yes, you can, get crypto and get a wallet and do all that, but you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to. You don't have to make your fans do that if they don't want to. So I think it's important to cater to traditional consumers because most of us are that. So check out Even, even.biz. They're doing a lot of dope things. There's also Sound XYZ, which is one of the more popular music NFT platforms. And essentially you can have what we call collections. So you can have NFTs as small as 25 per collection. You can have them as large as infinite. You can price them as high or low as you want. This is something that they just rolled out recently, but now you can purchase using Apple Pay, Google Pay, credit card. So again, like this was a traditional platform, or traditional in terms of like Web3 native platform, I should say, that people had to have wallets and crypto and whatever else to purchase. And now they're introducing, Web2 regular purchasing. So something to keep in mind. And they've got a lot of great folks working with them over there. Then there's Catalog, which is what we call one-of-one type NFTs. So a one-of-one means that that's the only type of it that exists. It's just the one. And they have like a sort of bid to collect. So you'll have like what we call the floor price or the minimum bid price, and you can set that as high or low as you want. And then someone will try to purchase it at that minimum bid price. And then depending on how in demand it is, there might be other people who will be bidding to be able to, collect it at a higher price. So that's something to check out as well. And then all the ones that I mentioned are audio, by the way. So it's like music, like MP3. Mm-hmm. And there's Zora, which is can be video or photo assets. That's cool. So if you have like behind the scenes photos or like photos from a show that you want to have in an NFT collection, you can do that. And then, again, you can set pretty much any price. You can make it one, you can make it 1 million. It could be as many as you want. Unchained is a distribution company that's interesting to look into because you can distribute through them regularly, just, music, like the same way you would get it through like DistroKid or whatever, but they also have that on-chain aspect of things. So definitely look into Unchained distro, doing some cool stuff over there. Another cool platform is Showtime. Showtime is cool because you can tie it to pre-save campaigns. So people are always looking for their music to be pre-saved on Spotify, especially, and then also to be followed on these DSPs, because all those metrics are important as you're building your brand and building your platform. So look into Showtime, Showtime XYZ, they're doing really cool stuff. And they're making it easier by the day for the average person to get involved. So tap in with them. Wanted to mention also Manifold. Manifold is a dope platform because it is completely creator owned. So like everything can be done from scratch, and they kind of, it looks like it's essentially like no code to the rest of us because you're not like, typing in lines of code to create it. But it's for folks who don't want to utilize really any platform. So like say like you're like, okay, I don't know if I really want to have something live on, Sound or Catalog or whatever. Fine. You can use Manifold, and then you own what we call the smart contract and all of the different terms that apply to that. And essentially it makes it super easy for you to set things up to be able to mint the NFT, and minting is just to, put it on chain. And it also makes it easy for every other parameter essentially. So if you don't want to learn how to code, if you don't want to learn Solidity, but you also are trying to remain, I guess, like platform agnostic, then Manifold is that girl. Arpeggi is interesting because that's something that would appeal a lot to producers or people who want to have like sound kits or vocal kits or anything of that kind of capacity. You can partner with Arpeggi, which also has their sound kit subsidiary, which is Kits. And they have some really dope stuff going on, very creator focused community. Then there's also Mona, which is for metaverse type stuff. So we talked about, performing in like virtual reality. They're really, really great for that. And again, super creator focused. There's also Hype Shot. They used to be called the 402, but now they're called Hype Shot. So that's for live streaming. So if you're looking to get into live streaming on chain, Hype Shot is the best platform for that. And then I wanted to talk about some platforms that are a little bit more focused on sort of either written content or kind of posts. Lens Protocol is great. They're basically like Twitter, but they're on chain. So the interesting thing about Lens is that you can do, again, photos, videos, posts, but like your followers will follow you everywhere. So if because Lens is not a platform, it's a protocol, which is like a whole other conversation. But essentially on a platform is like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, these all exist separately. You have to build following separately on all those. But if you build a following on Lens Protocol, whether they're on the photo or video or written side platforms, it's the same followers across the protocol. So if you have followers on Lenster, which is like Twitter, those same followers will also be on LensTube, which is like YouTube. Those same followers will also be on Lensta, which is like Instagram. So it's interesting that no matter where people exist in the Lens verse, those followers are there and your content exists there in whichever way it needs to. Also, all that content can be monetized as NFTs. And they have like a creator program that I was a part of that was really great. So tap in if you're into that type of stuff. Also wanted to mention Nostr, which is another protocol. Interestingly, it's technically not Web3 because it's not on chain, but you can monetize any of your posts. And the type of crypto they use is Bitcoin, but it's like micro transactions of Bitcoin called Satoshis. So I've seen different types of artists make like thousands depending on the type of content on their post. So it's a cool way for creators to kind of look into that because it's very similar to Twitter. But again, it's a protocol. So no matter like what version of the app or whatever versions of the apps or platforms you use, all the followers are there with you. The content is all there. And again, it can all be monetized. Then there's NFT Now, which they're rolling out some interesting ways for creators to get involved. So like tap in with them. I don't know if they necessarily do like op-ed type stuff, but it's something to explore. Like maybe you can be a contributor or something. But I like what they're doing, and I think it's a cool example of stuff can work. And then similarly, which I might have mentioned lightly, is Mirror, which is like blogging, newsletter, that sort of thing, but all on chain. All those things can be collected, all those things can be monetized. Last but not least, Matter Realities, which is super dope. They're rolling out their creator program where essentially you can create short form content. They've since pivoted, so they're not like strictly Web3, like they kind of appeal to really anyone, but they have like their own kind of token, which you can redeem as points, or anyone who's like a fan of your content on there would redeem as points. So it's something to look into as well. It's been cool kind of seeing people pivot that were originally like very like strictly Web3 and kind of become more like Web2 friendly. So look into them as well. That's the short list. There is a lot more. But
moral of the story is do your research.
your research. Oh, one more thing I actually want to mention, which is cool, is Mochi, because they're essentially kind of like gamifying a lot of things that happen in Web3. So look into them. They're what we call like kind of a DAO or community, and there's different types of DAOs or communities. There's FWB, there's CPG, there's so many. But they kind of like gamify things, and they've been able to tie that into even like TikTok and Web2 platforms. So check them out too, Mochi. Cool people.
Love it. So we just gave y'all a host of resources and just different platforms and protocols that you can be looking into if you're trying to get a better sense of understanding what all of this is, or how different groups, companies, communities are building out platforms that can be useful for creatives, non-creatives, however you identify. There's a lot, this is an open terrain, it's emerging tech. So there's going to be a lot of different explorations. There's going to be a lot of different acquisitions and combinations and shifts, like Ladi's talking about, where companies are shifting to be more inclusive of the Web3 technology, or they're shifting out of Web3 and inclusive of Web2 and all the different things. So it's important just to kind of like, try and stay abreast. Obviously, it's a lot, we know, but just making sure that you're at least arming yourself with the knowledge and the access to this kind of information, so you can make your own decision on how you want to be involved or not be involved with utilizing any of it. But there's
no, for real. Like honestly, again, it's a spectrum, right? It's like strictly Web2, which is like no Web3 whatsoever. And then there are people who are strictly Web3, no Web2 whatsoever. And it's like none of it is right or wrong. You can exist anywhere on that spectrum, but we're just giving you guys like the TLDR on these things. And it really just, when it comes to balancing, just keep in mind that it's all about like your goals. Like, what is it that you're looking to accomplish? What are the things that you want to do? How do you want to monetize, or how do you want to grow, or what sort of like impact do you want to have? All those different factors are what's going to play a role in how you exist within the realms of Web2 and Web3.
And it'll help to play a role in how you decide what you want to utilize within Web2, Web3 to help you achieve said goals. So just keep that in mind. Always stay rooted in what that goal is, and then work backwards from there. Y'all know we talk about that all the time.
Shout out to reverse engineering. That's really what it is. But yeah, just food for thought.
Food for thought, just putting this on the table for y'all. Do it as you will. And if there are no questions, y'all know how we get down. Y'all know where to find us next week. I can't believe this is episode 13.
Yeah. And just so y'all know, there's only 3 more episodes left in the season. So after episode 16, we are going to be rolling out all the full episodes on YouTube. So make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube. And that's also when newsletter things are going to be happening. So stay tuned for that.
All right, y'all. It's been real. See y'all next week for episode 14.
Yay.
Bye, y'all.